Thank you.
Well,
All right.
welcome everybody, and thank you for being here today for this session about all student-centered academic support in a fully online undergraduate program. I'm Cindy Daugherty. I am the undergraduate writing coordinator for the Academic Support Center at the Chicago School.
And I'm Kat Bell. I am the Associate Director of Academic Support and Learning at the University Library at Chicago School. I work with Cindy, and we are super excited to have one of our peer writing fellows joining us today. So I'm going to give a little
Yes.
shout out to Nicole. Thank you.
Thank
So
you for being
excited to
here,
see you.
Nicole.
Um, I am going to be running our slides, and we want to start with just a quick Mentimeter. I'll throw the link in the chat for those of you who are not looking at this via screen or would prefer to not get on your phone. So I'll go ahead and grab our question. And really, we want to know what drew you to a session about human-centered writing support or human-centered academic support. And so this will just populate as a word cloud, throw in a couple of words. If you scan it with your phone, it'll take you straight in. If you use the link, it should link it. Um, Looks like we have some answers waiting to come in. You are also always welcome to unmute and speak out. We are hoping to have an interactive session today. Just let me know if you're having any trouble accessing our Menti. Welcome. If you are just joining us today, we have a Mentimeter running for our session to think about what drew you to a session on human-centered writing support. You can unmute or add to the chat. We're going to go ahead and kind of keep rolling, and we will come back to any questions that you have or anything that drew you in. We recognize this is the last session before the break, and everybody is kind of balancing their regular lives around conference time. I'm going to go ahead and move to our next slide and talk to you a little bit about what we're hoping that you get out of today's workshop. So we're hoping to spend a little bit of time, or planning to spend a little bit of time going over the challenges that we found in providing support to adult learners in a fully online undergraduate program in a hybrid institution. So our institution has a number of different contexts all mixed together. And then we want to describe our process for defining and operationalizing human-centered support through our Peer Writing Fellows program, and then give quite a bit of time to crowdsource some solutions that might work for your institution. So we've got some brainstorming built in, we've got some interactivity built in. Again, you can unmute, you can add to the slides that we are sharing, or you can just add to the chat. And we would love to hear from you and make this more interactive than one-sided. So we're going to start just with our context and challenges in supporting adult learners in fully online environments. Cindy's going to go ahead and go over our institutional and program context.
So first, we thought it might be helpful to just know a little bit about our institutional context, what kind of school we are and what kind of students we have. The Chicago School has multiple colleges and they comprise about 6,000 students. The College of Undergraduate Studies comprises about 360 of those students. And our demographics are really interesting because we have about 74% of our undergraduates are identifying as first generation college students, which means they bring a lot of unique needs to the online asynchronous space. In our College of Undergraduate Studies, we currently offer 3 bachelor's degrees, and 2 of those by 2027 will have 90 credit degree programs. We'll also be adding a fourth one in the BS of Biomedical Sciences. All of these degrees were created in the College of Undergraduate Studies to sort of prepare students to matriculate to our grad degree programs. That said, our College of Undergraduate Studies program operates on limited core faculty. So we have about 8 full-time faculty in that college, and students are auto-enrolled to take 2 courses at a time in a fully asynchronous course program. So we use Canvas as our learning management system, and each of our classes is an 8-week compressed course. And by 8 weeks, we mean that 16 weeks of context or content is sort of in that 8 weeks, but students actually have 7 weeks and 1 day to complete their coursework. So it is quite a fast pace. And they use what they're calling signature assignments as a measure of their program success. These are often writing assignments. They're often not quite scaffolded into the program, the course content, the way that would fully support students being able to produce those at a high level.
So, in terms of the academic support that we offer, we are very lucky to have such a big academic support department. I consider it to be large. We have 6,000 students, but we have 3 full-time academic support specialists. I'm the associate director. Cindy is our undergraduate writing coordinator, and we have a lead writing specialist. We are also adding an additional 3 learning specialists this summer to help support the onboarding of the Illinois College of Osteopathic Medicine, which ideally our undergraduate Bachelor of Science in Biomedical Sciences will feed into. So part of what we're looking at in academic support context is how do we build at scale with limited staffing? For such a large institution, but it's also a lot of staffing for a small institution when we look across different Writing Center and Learning Commons. So we have 6 part-time professional staff members, as well as 8 federal work study peer staff. We've got 2 of them on the call here today. So thank you, Huberta and Nicole. And we have a range of backgrounds, mostly focused on pedagogy around writing. That all contributes to what it is that we do. And this is one of the toughest things at an institution across all learning commons academic supports is actually making clear to faculty and students what it is that we do in our context. We have focused primarily now this year on one-to-one writing support that's live. We offer asynchronous options so that students can have a video recording, a multimodal option for getting asynchronous comments on an assignment or a paper or a chapter. We've upped our workshops and webinars, so we delivered those on a variety of topics, sometimes in collaboration with the library, sometimes as standalones. Some of those come out of course collaborations. Those really, for me, are the most valuable and the most fun to put together is when we get to collaborate with instructors on supplemental learning material. One of the things that we've implemented this year are writing groups and writing retreats to help create community and really focus on how to bring students together. We do a variety of other things at the institution as well as all of you do, right? Like we are peppered in with the one more thing or other duties as suggested on our job applications or our job descriptions. Our academic support context has gone through a number of changes in the past couple of years, which has opened the door for us to think about how we want to reorganize our academic support, especially for colleges like undergrad that are fully asynchronous. We went from 5 campus centers to 1 national center, all online, and then reorganized again and moved underneath the library, which for me is one of the best options because we have the ability to have that expanded staffing. Our budget is protected underneath academic affairs, and our university librarian is cued into all things accessibility and has us collaborating with each other and departments in a slightly more effective way than if we were just out on our own as a service center. A lot of what we're doing is tied to our institutional strategic initiatives. Everything from the goals that we set as individual employees to the goals that we're setting for our department are supposed to go towards at least one or more of our strategic initiatives. In the library, we are really focusing on redefining excellence across the student journey. And for especially the peer writing fellows program and undergrad, how do we redefine student engagement and get them into our services and conversations? A lot of this is part of developing this transformative learning and development ecosystem. So we're working really hard on how we can decrease the silos and increase our engagement with other programs and locations across our system. So in this really large context that we have, we are trying to find those person-to-person contact points.
So there were several reasons that we started thinking about changing the way that we were approaching student support in the Academic Support Center. One of those was the pressure that we were under to help with student retention and persistence. So as I said, our College of Undergraduate Studies is really intended to prepare students to go on to a graduate program, and we hope that they stay and go on to our graduate programs. But we were finding that students weren't getting to that point. We were having a hard time getting them to persist through their degree program and still are to get to that place where they were ready to go on to a grad program. And we were being asked a lot of questions about how we were going to help students get to that place in academic support services. The second one really was AI. I'm sure that all of us here have experienced the ways that generative AI has disrupted the way that we provide education, specifically, I would say, in the online environment. Our program is fully asynchronous and online, so this has created several layers of intricacy for us in figuring out how we make sure that students are learning, how we make sure that they're acting ethically in the way that they engage with those tools. And we found that in this program, we have a very heavy emphasis on writing and critical thinking and communication, but we aren't scaffolding in the literacies that students need to figure out how do I maintain academic integrity and protect my own processes from generative AI, especially when they're now built into the very tools that we ask students to use when they are writing and creating for their classes or when they're reading for their coursework. And lastly, we really were seeing our offerings at the Academic Support Center being underused by our undergraduate population. We did not have a lot of connection with those students. They weren't coming to see us in the Writing Center very often. And we were starting to hear from them in different ways that they were really hungry for connection.
Mhm.
Um, we definitely feel that there is sort of this underground curriculum in an undergraduate program where you become a scholar, you become part of a discourse community, you become an academic and someone who's focused on a certain area and a way of thinking. And to do that, you need connections, you need models, you need mentors. And our students were feeling very disconnected from those kinds of supports. We also had a lack of engagement with our other resources. So we do offer lots of webinars and workshops, but previously they were largely focused on graduate students and on truly on dissertation writing and preparation, which in our context might make sense. We have a very large population of students who are in those programs, but our undergraduates were sort of being underserved in that area. And so they weren't engaging with long workshops and webinars that were perhaps aimed at dissertation type writing and grad student levels. So first we had to figure out what the challenges were that we were facing so we could figure out how to help support our students and the other stakeholders in our College of Undergraduate Studies in the ASC. So first thing that we really started thinking about was the cognitive load of a fully asynchronous online bachelor's degree program. Our students were coming in thinking, okay, I know how to use technology. I'll probably be fine with an online program. They're often shocked at how many kinds of technology they will need to use and how much reading and writing is involved in going to school online. So one really obvious thing for us has been that students really struggle with digital reading. We've tried to do away with textbooks and use OER open resources or articles from the library system to reduce the cost for our students, which I think is a great thing to do, but it does increase the load of digital reading, which research does show is challenging for many people. And our students were not prepared for the cognitive load of the reading and writing that they would do. They were also showing that they were coming in with perhaps some areas that they needed to grow in supporting skills. While we don't usually directly teach things like time management and, how to plan for getting your work done, what does it look like to put a fully online college program in your life? They're expected to know how to do those things. They're expected to be able to manage all of those things. And we were seeing that our students needed some support in those areas. For our faculty, we do not have an articulated writing across the curriculum program, which means that we were not seeing the kind of scaffolding of writing tasks that you would want to see in these larger assignments. So if we're using things like large signature assignments that are writing heavy to assess program outcomes. That's really sort of a mismatch when we don't have that scaffolding in to make sure that they're ready to do those larger signature assignments. We also have SME created courses, which means that the instructor does not create their own course most of the time. They are created by subject matter experts, people who have expertise in psychology or criminology, and then those courses are delivered through shared syllabi and Canvas courses to the adjunct instructor or instructors. They teach those classes. So they don't have autonomy necessarily over what kinds of assignments are in those courses or how they're scaffolded. They can't make a lot of changes to them. So that is a significant challenge for the faculty. As for staff, we were really just experiencing a lot of pressure to then scaffold writing in the courses really without the ability to control the way curriculum is mapped, the way courses are built, the way writing instruction is happening in those spaces. So we were dealing with limited times and great student need with a lot of pressure to sort of fold in scaffolds somehow in our interventions.
So we'd really like to know what challenges you are facing in meeting your student learning needs. So I'm going to go ahead and put a link to our Padlet in the chat and go ahead and pull that up. So we want to give a chance for people to kind of brainstorm what are the challenges that you're experiencing in your context that may have brought you to this session. So we'll give a few minutes for that and then kind of unpack a few of the thoughts that we have around the shift that we have to human-centered. So again, please unmute or add to the chat or add to the Padlet. And just as a note, I have zero judgment for anybody who is eating lunch or staring into space. Feel free to come off of video mute or regular mute to chat with us.
Yes, this is quite a question in our current academic context too. What challenges are we having to meeting student learning needs because their needs are, I feel, just becoming greater all the time.
So I know just from who
Mm,
I'm talking to in the ask, we're seeing overwhelm and increasing financial pressures. Um,
absolutely.
yes, absolutely. Faculty interested in developing workshops, shortening them, transitioning to from
Y-
hour is hard.
yes, we
Mm.
have experienced quite a bit of that as well. Because especially for undergrads trying to get get their time is difficult sometimes. And yes, we have been also thinking about how do we deliver in shorter form?
Yep.
Do we break our videos into a series of short videos? Like, how can we make this accessible? But sometimes it's a challenge, right? Because a topic they need to learn about might be, well, long and difficult. It's hard to make everything short and simple.
Well, and I think one of the things that we noticed was that like whatever student need it is, there's like 10 other needs underneath that that feed into that.
Mm,
Right? Anytime a faculty member says something like, my students can't write a paragraph. Okay, but what are they writing a paragraph about? Is this because they don't know what a structure of a paragraph could look like, or is it because they're not understanding the reading that you've assigned?
mm,
And when we look at some of the readings and the assignments, one of the big challenges is that we don't have access to changing them, right? Like we look at them and they're poorly written, or there's actual errors in the like process that students are supposed to follow where there's contradictions. Oh, yeah, I love this, Austin, embracing co-creation with graduate students.
hmm
And I think that that's something that's really lacking in our particular model. And I think, this is something that we see other institutions able to do in a more nimble environment is co-create on the syllabus and negotiate with students for what they need and when they need it. But we aren't seeing that in our SME created courses that are totally asynchronous. And when we talk about total asynchronous delivery and fully remote learning, there has been an assumption at our institution that if it's a remote program, no information should be going out synchronously at all. But we're finding that students are really kind of hungry for that and they
hmm
don't understand what it means to just have the modern version of correspondence school
hmm
instead of live interaction. So the more that we put in videos, the more that we think about what students are doing and allow our peer writing fellows to co-create with the students in casual formats or in just-in-time formats that we'll talk about here in a minute, the more success that we're really seeing with meeting some of these needs. So we're going to keep adding to the Padlet. There will be a couple other breakout rooms of Padlet style, and then everybody will have access to this following the session so that you can kind of see where people's needs are and what solutions we're coming up with.
So now we want to talk a little bit about the way we've participated in a sort of cultural shift in the College of Undergraduate Studies and how we've gone toward a more focus and center on humans. Um, I think this is especially important now when we're seeing AI sort of take over certain parts of the work that we did. So maybe they don't need us to do things like make sure their paper is perfectly grammatically correct or they need their citation added. Some of them do still need that kind of coaching, but we really wanted to focus on what do we do in the Academic Support Center that is human-centered, and is they're interventions that AI can't do. Well, how can we support students in ways that are unique that AI cannot replicate? So, what we kind of wanted to know is what do you think it means to have a human-centered approach? We all know that sometimes terms get thrown around, and the truth is that there are multiple ways of defining that term. And when we all say it, we might mean something that's a bit nuanced. So, we'd love to hear from you before we talk about what we thought it meant, what you think of when you hear human-centered approach.
And again, you can use the Menti being this guide on the side rather than the sage on the stage. I love that. Yes. And you can enter as many times as you want. I think I've got it set for that. And I think that the guide on the side can be really hard when you're the owner of that LMS platform, right? When you can actually see things in Canvas that others can't, that your students don't have access to. You can see the meta structure that is there, but that kind of structuring may not make it all the way out to the students.
I also think that's difficult to add to what you're saying, Kat, that in an online environment, you tend to see those products. We don't get their faces in front of us when we're grading that paper. Their face isn't there. And we're seeing so much product, so much grade book, and so little student
And I
in an
think,
online
that
space.
that product-centered approach leads to some of that performing in discussion forums, right? Instead of being able to have a live and organic discussion, we're seeing a lot of discussion forums that students are being graded on their writing, they're being graded on their comprehension, but they aren't necessarily being told how they are. Oh, I love this. Considering the entirety of a person during sessions, not being overly focused on what you want to academically achieve, that you miss life difficulties that made it hard for them to perform. I really appreciate this.
Hmm.
I think, when we're working with adult learners, especially in the age group that we have, right? So if 67% of our students are over the age of 25, the chance that they are caring simultaneously for themselves, an older generation, and a younger generation, as well as existing in our current socio-political context and trying to learn and trying to work, right? Like they've got a lot going on. And these are all new platforms. They may be excellent in tech at their job. And then the Canvas platform is just opaque to them. A lot of us had to have that kind of rough reintroduction to learning via tech in COVID, and now we've kind of kept on with that. Actively reading participant discussion board responses. The number of complaints that we get at the Ask because we're a safe space about like, I don't think my professor's even reading my stuff. I think that every response might have been AI. And it's, the AI use is also on the faculty side, not just on our student side. So thank you. We're going to keep kind of going on this. So when we think about our focus on human-centered in academic support, we are really focusing on conversation over correction and comprehension over compliance, right? Everybody needs to be able to meet the requirements of their disciplinary writing strategy. However, we are not the APA format enforcers. I don't like it. We want to focus on how are we conversing about writing as a whole student, recognizing that they may have turned to AI because they're so overwhelmed or because they were just trying to understand or they're trying to sound smarter. So we want to focus our human-centeredness on identifying, recognizing, validating that our students' academic issues and struggles are coming from a lot of different places that involve their whole person, that this is an emotional journey for them. And for us to disregard that, to make them anonymous even more than they are, to turn them into those grade book lines or student numbers, fails to uplift their individual voices, experiences, and triumphs. So we want to lean into those. Beyond that, we also think of human-centered learning as learning for our peer consultants as well, our peer writing fellows, our employees, our professional staff, because that's also where they're developing a sense of their self as particularly as a professional. This is incredibly important in a model like ours, where the majority of our peer writing consultants go on to or are already working in clinical roles, working with often underserved, marginalized communities to try to bring kind of voice to those spaces and reduce stigma around help seeking. So, what we started with was fine. Like it worked okay-ish, but we found that it was really not targeting what we needed it to target. And it was a fairly wasteful model. And I hate saying that so bluntly, but when we really sat down to look at where our budget was going, we were paying professional writing consultants to be part of a mix of undergrad and graduate courses and police APA compliance and AI use in ways that even the instructors of record were not policing, right? We were the ones that were having to go in and say, oh, sorry, student, you have 100% AI on this paper and I'm going to have to return it. But also, your instructor already gave you a 50 out of 50. So, what do we do about that? And all of that was coming through asynchronous writing support, primarily in Canvas through canned comments and Annotate Pro. the intent for that was really well intentioned, right? Like we wanted to be faculty centered, teach faculty how to model for faculty how to put in effective comments. Unfortunately, our comments weren't always matched to what they were doing because we didn't have advanced knowledge and they weren't timed so that students could revise. Beyond that, we didn't have a system for putting priority on certain classes. It was a first come, first served model. We didn't focus on writing intensive or key classes or capstone classes. There was no categorizing how we assigned our embedded tutors. So just if you wanted a TA, you ended up with one. And unfortunately, it was largely based on instructors who approached their courses with a deficit mindset of the students in this class can't write. I need you to come in and fix them. And sadly, that transitioned into like our mindset too around how faculty were engaging, and we failed to recognize their subject matter expertise and our process matter expertise. And those are two different things, right? And so we started thinking about how we can change those relationships, change those perspectives on our side and theirs, because in academic support, we are often just as guilty of making assumptions about faculty members and what their capacity is, what their role is, as they are about ours. So we saw some real opportunities, particularly around serving our first generation students. And Cindy's mentioned a little bit about that hidden curriculum. How do we help our students see that hidden curriculum through conversation and shift their perspectives on help-seeking behaviors, especially with the age group that we are looking at, who the word tutoring is often associated with being fixed, being remediated, being set aside as lesser than your peers. And really, what we want to do is help students see the workforce skills that they already have, the professional skills, and use those to help hone their academic skills. And I'll turn it over to Cindy to talk a little bit about like the opportunity with undergrad.
We, with the undergrad population, what we really wanted to do is start realigning ourselves with the students. We were really sort of aligned with faculty, getting in speed grader, knowing what was going on in there, and we wanted to pull back from that and really start providing a more low stakes, collaborative peer model where the students could feel, again, like the Writing Center was what it should always have been, which was a non-evaluative space where students can feel free to struggle with writing. We also wanted to start creating more opportunities for our students to experience success. Our students often come with academic experiences that are negative. They often have lots of negative experiences about writing. I can't say how many times I've heard students say, I'm just not good at writing. I didn't do well in high school with writing. They feel uncomfortable trying to write in a new voice for academic spaces. We wanted to create ways that we could help them experience how to do that in an authentic way and feel successful. We also wanted to provide more individual support to our online learners. They were coming two sessions in embedded situations talking about that need for connection, for collaboration. Getting them to do that is sometimes still a struggle, but they're starting to see, and there's this shift happening in our undergraduate college, just seeing that they need that connection, they need the community. And then we really wanted to provide a meaningful experience to our student employees. We wanted our writing fellows and our consultants to develop as professionals, to come away from this with an experience that puts them into their professional career with new mindsets, new skills, ways of enacting the things that they've learned in writing and academic support that translate into those new spaces that they inhabit.
The biggest question that we face whenever we are talking about the change that we're making or decisions that we're making, especially in a department that had sketchy data collection for the last decade or so, largely because we were fragmented. We talked to a whole lot of people. We started with undergraduate faculty and leadership. We talked to our academic support staff. We talked to library leadership, and we talked to the student success and accessibility staff. So we have some naming issues at our institution where we have a lot of acronyms that seem very similar, and the lines are sometimes blurred between what we do as academic support and what our student support staff does to help get students plugged into advising networks, financial aid, accessibility offices, student life, right? But really, our conversations focused on student needs, faculty needs, and capacity. Because we recognize that the model that we had that blended that graduate and undergraduate and was somewhat randomly assigned, that's not sustainable, it's not scalable, and we really did not have the capacity to keep that going. However, we also had to consider what was our capacity for making change at this moment when so many other changes are happening and figuring out what our like small shifts would be to make sure that we met the new goals without kind of losing a lot of the good that we had built or overwhelming our staff and faculty um, with new expectations.
So we took all of that information and everything we had gleaned from those conversations. We created the Peer Writing Fellows program. It's different from our embedded model in several ways. First, it is staffed by peer writing consultants. So we don't use any of our professional staff as embedded tutors anymore. We hired the staff to be peer consultants. They're only in undergraduate courses currently. Eventually, we may scale this up to graduate courses again, but right now we're focusing on our undergraduate courses. And we put our emphasis on ethical scholarship and AI literacy and social connection and helping them scaffold in those skills that they need to complete those larger writing assignments. We removed all of this asynchronous feedback that creates higher cognitive loads of having to read tons of feedback and figure out what to do with it, and it's disconnected from the rubric grade. We took all of that out and we focused on one-on-one live writing support. We also added in group coaching opportunities such as workshops that are geared toward our undergraduate population, meaning coming to a workshop to get some part of an assignment done instead of a webinar where they're expected to sort of sit and listen to somebody give a presentation for 45 minutes. We shifted all of that to getting work done. We also shifted to having virtual study hall, which is really just an opportunity to co-work, to have someone model how to do maybe the Pomodoro method, to get things done, to focus on certain tasks. And then we put in lots of student-centered scaffolded pedagogical approaches. And we'll talk a little bit about how we've trained our peer writing fellow staff to enact that. But our entire emphasis has been on writing intensive support. It's not, we didn't want to be in those early classes anymore where the writing stakes are pretty low. They're still getting acclimated to their classes. We wanted to get into those writing situations where they get in desperate need of help, and we want to help them so that they don't rely on AI unethically. They build skills, they build their confidence, they build their self-efficacy. And then last, we started really looking at the whole student focus. We make sure that we're not just talking about writing. We're also trying to coach academic skills like time management and task initiation, like getting something done. Not staying stuck for too long with procrastination. We really tried to put those skills in. So we created a job description that would support hiring a staff that could enact this new model. And we focused on what they need to be able to do in courses to support those responsibilities, and then how they needed to be focused on students so that they could conduct those live meetings that really help students where they meeting them where they are. And we did that through creating processes for hiring, training, and professional development that really support our peer writing fellow staff in their own development.
So I'm going to have Cindy talk a little bit about what's better, and but we have some things that we still need work on. This is an ongoing process for us.
Right. I mean, we had immediate wins, and then we have new immediate recognition of things that need to be improved. So first, we increased our live consultations in the Academic Support Center with our undergraduate students immediately. We saw new appointments coming into the ASC. We also saw improved work experiences for our peer writing fellows. So they were getting better trained, they were feeling more confident about helping students. which makes some of the things that still need work difficult because our staff are ready. They are prepared. They are excited to help students. They want to build new relationships with the stakeholders and work well with faculty. So the ways that it has gotten immediately so great, and we've had some great wins, also have made it very obvious that there are still some things that need to be worked out.
The biggest is our instructor collaborations and curricular conversations. So we are trying with the library and librarians to find ways into those curricular groups to think about what these courses look like as they're being revised. How do we scaffold these skills and make it so that students can feel more academic successes early? Because that's one of our kind of pain points is that when they continue to feel a lack of success, they continue to experience a lack of success. So if we can get in and make some changes, we've got some ways to do that, but it is a slow process because a lot of these courses are designed outside and need to be budgeted in. It's not a quick, we can just change this assignment and go on. We're also working on developing our landing page and website resources for our students and our faculty. We've recently switched under LibGuides, so we have a whole website transition to do. Part of that is just to help us with our communication between ourselves and the program. And then our biggest challenge for the library overall is developing our specific learning outcomes for the library and improving our assessment measures for tracking success. We can tell you anecdotally that this is going well, but we won't know for a couple of years what the retention impacts have been, if any, in terms of the correlation between our support and what undergraduate studies is experiencing. So we want to give the rest of the time to kind of crowdsourcing and problem solving in the interest of time and just to open up conversation. I'll share the entire Padlet. So each of these will appear in their own columns, but we can also just kind of grab the entire conversation and take a look at that. So we want to think about like what are the needs for human-centered support at your institution. So we've got a little bit of about the challenges already that we faced. And then what are the solutions and how can we best support each other? We've got our job description, our full job description linked, as well as the Padlet in our shared resources on the presentation that I will put in again. But we're going to go ahead and head over to our Padlet and take a look at all of our topics at one time. So you should be able to access all of our Padlet columns right now. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and give us some time. You can unmute. We'd love to have a conversation around what you're seeing, what you're needing for the last 8 minutes of our session. We can also continue to add to the Padlet. But I'll go ahead and stop sharing so we can have more of an organic conversation. And I will grab our presentation link as well, so that you've got access to our PowerPoint once you leave. So any needs, solutions, triumphs, or questions that we can kind of field or open a conversation about. Otherwise, I would love to hear from one of our peer writing fellows who's here today. We've got Huberta and Nicole. And I'm going to model the eating on camera by snacking
There
on
you go.
these
And
Haribos.
Huberta and Nicole, who are here today, were actually part of our earlier embedded tutor model. So they went through that with us, and they've been part of this peer writing fellows model. So they have walked through this transition with our program, which I think is a great perspective.
And Austin, like, talk about the co-creation because Nicole and Huberta every week are like, here's ways that we can improve this.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate your guys' workshop. It was really helpful and just insightful. I have two different sort of contexts that I was thinking of, and so that's part of why there was the two different answers. but one of them I'm a current graduate student in getting my master's in educational administration, and so part of it was that framing, but the other part is that I'm a staff member that works with um, at the National Institutes of Health. So
Great.
we have a pretty big cohort of postdoctoral fellows,
Mhm.
about 3 to 5,000, and so um, uh, I'm just interested in the um, peer support model because we sort of see a lot of similar things that you talked about of like trainee or we have trainees instead of or we call them trainees instead of students, but they're essentially non-traditional students that are older than 25 and are still doing sort of research work. And so um, it I don't know. I was we have some similar issues with like getting them comfortable with like the learning management software and getting them comfortable with asynchronous workshops and being comfortable with us pointing them to resources that maybe we didn't put together but we recommend. And so yeah.
No, I think we're wrestling with that at all of our levels as well, is, how do we get it out there without overwhelming them? How do we draw them
Yeah.
in? How do we make sure it's tied to something meaningful, right? Like we can create stuff all day long, and that was what we had been doing. But now that Nicole and Huberta are in the classes and really this is Grimothy, um, it is time for his treats. Uh, so we had the
Adorable.
ability to kind of look at like what are the real patterns there? And then I see Nicole on video.
Yeah, what is has your experience been like with that and what I joined a few minutes late so I may have missed a small part of it but I uh is what sort of training do you do or get or is there I don't know are you like paid or is it just sort of like a mentorship type of role?
Those are all good questions. Firstly, since my role has changed a bit, we went from sort of the peer embedded tutor format to the peer writing fellow. So I've gone through new training, which I thought was really nice. The original training was, I think, a little bit less involved. There was a lot less collaboration. It was more work in terms of just go ahead and do these things and we'll check it for accuracy and then you're good to go. And shadowing, of course, we were doing like I shadowed Cindy for a couple sessions just to sort of make sure that I knew what was expected of me. But the new training, we'd created a bunch of modules and we sort of embedded them in our training in a way that we would be meeting all of us as a whole, so we could discuss how the training was going, any questions we had. We were doing a lot of reading outside resources on what a writing center is and theory and how to best support adult learners and things like that. So not only I think has the position improved in terms of helping people, but I think the training is even better than it was.
Oh, awesome.
Um,
That's great.
and since I'm doing like a federal work study position, the Chicago school, I think this is how it works, gets like a grant for the federal work study, and then that's how I get paid. So
Oh,
it is a paid
nice.
position, which is really nice,
Yeah.
and definitely something that I appreciate. But yeah, it's definitely been a change, for the better, I would say.
That's awesome. That's super cool. So kind of like a sort of a train the trainers, but for your or like for the actual students. That's super
Hmm.
cool. Thank you.
Hmm. Yeah.
But add to that with like kind of my experience a little bit as well. I'm sorry I don't have my camera on, but
You're good,
um,
Huberta. Thank you for
I,
being up. I know you work nights.
yeah, being in the embedded tutor program and just transitioning, you realize like how much changes, especially in the training, as like Nicole said. I feel like with the asynchronous feedback that we were giving, it's so hard to like kind of like explain your point to a student without using like 500 words so that they don't get overwhelmed. And also I think it's something that there are a lot of things I didn't think about, like I wasn't thinking about the level, like how much the student knows. I was assuming certain things they would know. I wasn't thinking about, is English the student's first language? I didn't know how to notice that, but I think once we were transitioning to the peer writing fellow program and then the trainings, it's more than just about supporting students, but it also kind of works on your understanding and writing and how to deal with people. So I had to like now think about so many other things. Like this student probably English is not their first language, so this might be a little bit harder. We didn't go to school in the same places, so we might not know the same things, and being able to support them in that way. I feel like there's a lot more, it's more extensive, and honestly it's been so nice to see that I think the students benefit way more, because certain things like I would have said in an asynchronous feedback like comment bubble, once I say it in session, I see sometimes confusion on the students' faces, and it's like, boy, oh boy, if this was asynchronous, how would you understand what I meant to be able to actually incorporate that? But since it's live, they can ask for a breakdown. You can give more examples. You can model it and all sorts of things. So it's been an amazing, amazing experience to even learn how to be better as a writer. And it's paid, so even better. So yeah, it's
Yeah,
been
that's
amazing.
awesome. Oh, good. Thank you so much for explaining your experience. I really appreciate it. You while you were talking, it reminded me of, I'm not sure if there's a framework that you all are familiar with, but it's called TILT,
Mhm.
or Transparency in Learning and Teaching. But that's another technique that I learned recently, and it was uh just sounds similar. So thank you all.
Works really well. We're incorporating a lot of the COPE framework into what we're doing. And then in the chat, I just shared a really great resource for tutor training materials. So Center Moves is a new publication out from the Rocky Mountain Writing Centers Association, that is tutor training. So it's all peer-reviewed materials and it's full lesson plans. You can kind of sort by like what topic it is, but they're a great resource in the Colorado area. RMWCA ranges, it's on the Front Range from Canada all the way down through New Mexico. So it's a huge group of writing center associations. A lot of them are embedded in libraries or in learning commons. So some of the conversations are around like, how do we do this for graduate students? What does it look like for undergrads? And we use some of this in the training that Cindy has developed. I think we are right at time, Julie.
Yes, we are. Good job. We have a couple minutes if you want to wrap up, that's fine.
Super appreciate everybody coming in. I
Also,
put
just want to shout out, I super appreciate Nicole and you, Berta, that you're willing to come and share your experiences. You're just awesome and we're really proud of you. So thanks for being willing to share.
And Cindy and I are always open to additional conversations beyond the conference. So I'll go ahead and put my email in, and Cindy, you can put
Yep.
yours in as well.
Yep. Any questions about, developing the training, how we conducted those? I'm happy to answer any of those questions if you want to shoot me an email.
Thank you. Thank you both so much.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for being here today.
Bye, y'all.